Okay, well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on mediating workplace disputes in correctional facilities. My name is Vernon Fraser, and I am the membership coordinator for NAFCM, and we'll be getting us started today. But before we do get started, here's some basic information about how you can effectively participate in today's webinar. While the presenter is speaking, everyone else will be muted to ensure the best audio quality, although we do still encourage questions and comments throughout the webinar, and there's two ways that you can do so. If you would like to verbally ask a question or make a comment, you can raise your hand using the hand icon on the left side of your toolbar. That will alert me that you have a question or comment, and I can unmute you at that point. Or you can use the chat feature in the toolbar to send questions or comments, and I believe we're going to be also having some attendee participation in this, which is where you can do that as well, and that's located on the bottom of your toolbar. Before we begin, I would like to briefly introduce today's speaker, Sue Stacy. Sue Stacy has coordinated the Minnesota Department of Corrections Integrated Conflict Management System since January of 2007, and she served as the Department Planner for Evidence-Based Practices from 2003 to 2007, and as a Department Restorative Justice Associate Planner from 1995 until 2003. Sue has been a mediator and restorative justice practitioner since 1991 and is listed on the State Rule 114 Neutrals roster. She facilitates mediations and restorative processes for situations ranging from workplace disputes to crimes of severe violence. Sue holds a bachelor's degree in history and political science from Colorado College and a law degree from the University of Minnesota. With that being said, thank you for joining us today, Sue, and this is all yours.
Thank you. Many thanks to NAFCM for this opportunity, and President D.G. Mohm and Brennan and all of you. Anytime that I'm speaking, you all are presenting with me. Because I'm new to you, that's maybe news to you. So do encourage you to chat in the chat pane, ask questions. I'm more than happy to answer them. We have just an hour, so I'm going to try to pack a lot in, but I do depend on you participating. So here's the first situation. If you would picture yourself, we'll get this to move. Here we go. Take a moment, imagine yourself in this situation. You've been at your workplace for 5 years, you're good at your job, you know what you're doing, you're set. A few months ago, another employee from another part of your organization transferred into your work unit. Since then, you all have not been able to agree on anything. You have constant disagreements with each other. You feel attacked. Your coworkers are worried. They're observing all of this and wondering where it's going to end up and how they're going to be affected. And you're coming to work feeling actually sick to your stomach because this is affecting you so much. All right? So take a moment, picture that. And this is maybe what's going on. All right. So, given that situation, what are some of your options for dealing with the conflict? Chat pane, good? Or if you want to speak up, I guess you can do that too. See, take the issue to HR as a possibility. Could be, yep. What are some other options? Avoid the other person. Yeah. Confront the other person. Right? Good. Thanks, Marcia. Or Marcy, sorry. And Brennan. Yeah, these are all possibilities. Community mediation comes to mind, of course, possibly, right? Okay. Okay. So you're in a pickle. Those are some nice options. Now let's shift the location of that conflict to this workplace, a prison. So let's say you're that nice fellow with his crossed arms looking very disgruntled in the dark blue shirt, the officer. And your supervisor is the person you're having the dispute with. She's in the white shirt in back of him. You see the stink eye being given. And staff are definitely talking about the dispute. They're concerned, it's spreading out, gossip is proliferating, as happens. Right? So in that work site, what additional concerns might you have about dealing with a dispute? How is a prison different as a workplace? What do you think? You worry about your safety. Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Marcy. Yeah, if you're in dispute with somebody and you're in a dangerous environment, what does that mean, right? Hierarchical nature of corrections, you bet. Rank is very important. So that person, if you're having a dispute with your supervisor, they have extraordinary power, not just over your performance reviews, but given the amount of rules in a prison, perhaps writing you up for an infraction, investigating you, and disciplining you, maybe when it didn't have to be done, but because of the conflict, I don't know. Have any of you ever worked in corrections? Or policing, law enforcement? Seeing none? Okay. Let me enlarge about this for you. It's a very dangerous place. It's a very negative and dangerous place to work. Bad days can be very, very bad, including injuries on all sides. And staff hear and see things that their family members and other community members will never hear or see. Because security and safety are so important, there are very, very strict rules to keep everybody safe, the staff and the offenders. Rank is also important because of that. There's a lack of privacy that Marcy alluded to, I think. You're observing, you're watching the offenders, but the offenders are also watching you as staff. So there's a lack of privacy for staff conversations in a large way. Prison is essentially a small town operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And staff tends to be interrelated, not just because great majority of people meet their spouses at work, but because a prison is a dangerous place to work. It's an intense type of work, and sort of like law enforcement, I think, if it's okay for your parent to work there, you're going to consider a job there where you might not, or the neighbors next door might not. There's also, prisons are often in rural locations, and they are a major employer with honestly better benefits and pay, at least in Minnesota. I'm sure that's probably true elsewhere as well than other jobs. So you have an extreme nature of the job, you have an intensity of the relationships between staff, you have a lack of privacy. So how might those factors contribute to difficulties in trying to resolve the everyday workplace conflicts? What do you think? Tammy says you've worked with parole and probation, and you currently work with offenders and diversion. Lovely. And your family's law enforcement and corrections. So, yeah, stress. Yes, very much so. High stress job. Absolutely. Yeah, then you understand this environment a lot better than most of us and most folks outside of corrections. Right. Yeah, think how hard it is to confront or deal with a conflict in an office setting and then picture a prison. Right. Yeah. Thank you. So then what are some potential risks if you don't resolve the dispute in a prison setting? You've got the stress, as alluded to, as Tammy mentioned. Now you've got heightened stress. You're feeling sick coming to work. What's happening with all those offenders watching you and your lieutenant as you interact? Right. Thanks, Rachel. Safety. If the officers are not getting along, absolutely. Huge deal. Because what could be more fun for the offenders than playing the staff off of each other, dividing the staff? It can start with something as innocuous sounding as, oh, an offender saying, oh, gee, Sarge, I'm so sorry to hear the lieutenant trash talking you. That's so unfair. Do you want me to be your eyes and ears? I could report back to you when she does it again. Da, da, da. and you think, well, that's creepy, but what's the safety issue? But then there's potential for compromising that officer, because an offender, if the officer agrees, the offender's doing a favor for the officer, and then the offender expects a favor back from the officer, which is going to be breaking a rule and all sorts of things. Could lead down a slippery slope. So, yeah. And then you have the normal stuff that could happen in any workplace. If things don't get better, they tend to get worse, right? And so if you and your supervisor are not getting along, things could get worse with you in terms of performance reviews and whatever, and just discomfort. And then what happens? Staff feel compelled to take sides. People get caught in the middle, and it divides entire work units. Imagine you're familiar with this, many of you from doing mediations in other workplaces. Why don't you picture this? Thank you for your inputs on those. So what if you, as the officer in this scenario, had access to confidential mediation by trained facilitators, we call them facilitators, where your participation is voluntary and the stripes are taken off, we call it. People wearing bars or on their collars, shoulders, so that rank doesn't matter when you get together in a mediation. And without fear of the possibility of it being used against you in a grievance, a hearing, investigation, and a performance review. So it couldn't be used against you, whatever you said in that mediation. And in addition, you had access to coaching as an individual and training to increase your own skills in dealing with workplace conflict, so maybe you could resolve it on your own. This is what staff started at the Minnesota Department of Corrections at the Moose Lake Correctional Facility in the winter of 2000-2001. One of the advantages was that one of the case managers there was already an experienced mediator, trained and experienced mediator. And when staff looked for some way, some alternative for talking things through, instead of just writing each other up in confidential reports and then having investigations and the discipline fell wherever it was going to fall, this is what they started. Oh, thank you. I see another comment. Inmates are looking for weakness. Very difficult to let your guard down. Officers should be at their best. However, with workplace conflict, you are at your most stressed. Absolutely. That's it in a nutshell. Thank you. That's great. Yeah. So this was started first as face-to-face options, mediation and then circles and workplace conferences, just as the hallmark number 2, I believe, of the 9 hallmarks of NAFCM mentioned, making this available to all. Started one correctional facility, spread to central office and several others, and by 2003, it was throughout the entire agency. And interestingly, for us at least, it's a service that, or services that are available to not just staff, but also contractors and volunteers. We have hundreds of volunteers who come into the correctional facilities to do Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, religious activities, all sorts of activities. And they're carefully vetted, of course, but they are there interacting with staff as well as contractors. We have interfaith initiative. We have contractors of various sorts. So, yeah. So, any questions so far on that? I should check. I'm used to people being in the classroom where I can see you. Oh, okay. Ask questions at any time. So the policy, and should you want to look this up, there's the link, well, it's a link. It's a web address where you can find our public policy manual. You can look up any of the 4 policies I'll be referencing. Our program is the Integrated Conflict Management System. It started as the Conflict Response Initiative with the face-to-face services, and it became quite a bit broader, the Integrated Conflict Management System. By the way, that's not a catchy term, but it is an internationally recognized term. And in fact, in the United States, the federal agencies all have ICMSs. So as you can see, our mission is to create a conflict competent culture to up everybody's skills and game in dealing with the everyday conflicts that we experience as human beings. And the goal to create a more positive workplace. And the philosophy, it's based on restorative practices and transformative mediation. And some of where those cross over are that the principle we hold dear is that any group of people given some tools can clean up their own messes. That's crossed over between the two. So we're not directive in any way. Our mediators, our workplace conferencing facilitators, and our circle keepers are not directive of the outcome or of what people should be saying to each other. Relationship restoration is an objective that we hold very high, and repairing the harm as identified by those most closely involved. So how many of you are familiar with restorative justice or restorative practices in schools, workplace, or elsewhere? I'll give you some time to respond to that. I'd love to hear. Okay, 1, 2, yes. Yep, Tammy does well. April, yes, great. Okay, lovely. I don't know if I can make this box bigger, but I can see you as you come up. Linda, Brennan, great. Marcy, fantastic. Okay, great. Mary, wonderful. Then, and I'm assuming you also have mediation background. So yeah, you already see the crossover that I'm talking about. It sounds like many of you do. That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay. So the components, and this is going to give you maybe too much information, but for those of us who like too much information, I'm going to go through the components of the integrated conflict management system here in the Minnesota Department of Corrections. Okay, so first, face-to-face services. As I mentioned, those were the first things that got developed. Training. We trained staff in communication and conflict management skills. Assessment and evaluation is an important part. Excuse me, policy and practice alignment. And we have teams at each site. Now let me give you more details. So face-to-face services, we offer our mediation, which we call facilitation, because we're a union shop, and when the union contracts come up for negotiation for the next time period, and they stay up all night for a week and they can't agree sometimes, the mediation that happens in that way is third-party mediation, where they put labor in one room and management in another, and they stop them talking face-to-face, and the mediators go back and forth trying to hammer on them to meet in the middle. I was taught how to do that. You may well have been taught how to do that. It's an important skill and function, but it's not what we do here, because our whole focus is on having people speak for themselves face-to-face. So mediation, or facilitation on our terms, workplace conferencing, circles, and conflict coaching, which we do one-on-one. So one coach to one person in the dispute, helping that person think through and doing a lot of hard work in very specific terms to get more clear about what's happening with him or herself and what might be happening with the other person, and to think through how to approach the other person to ask them to sit down and talk it through, which of course takes a lot of courage. So that's something that we offer as a service as well. Training, mandatory trainings as well as optional. We have 4,200 to 4,300 staff in the agency, and in a given year, the agency staff will complete 9,000 to close to 14,000 training participant hours in our courses, required and optional. So new hires, all staff and new hires have been trained since fiscal year 08, so it's 11 years, in a 2.5-hour basic course. And all supervisors have been trained since fiscal year 09 and how to do third-party resolutions, which is a different model. There are certificates. Over 1,100 staff have earned an optional conflict management certificate by taking some additional courses. Well over half the agency have been trained in self-mediation. It's an MTI model, Mediation Training Institute, if you're interested to look that up. You get the picture. We have online courses in classroom. Assessment and evaluation, we have staff surveys about every other year, and part of that, and we started that, part of that is currently focused on staff experiences with workplace conflicts and how they were dealt with, everything from investigations, which we still have, of course, to using ICMS services or talking through on their own. And of course, if staff participate or when staff participate in a facilitated group meeting, we have feedback forms, as I'm sure all your programs do as well. Policy and practice alignment. All the policies are aligned to encourage staff to talk things through with each other. So if you care to look those up on that link or that website, ICMS, Integrated Conflict Management System, is our policy. Respectful workplace, discrimination-free workplace, and personal code of conduct of employees. By the way, the personal code of conduct of employees makes it required that all staff take training and develop skills and take constructive steps to deal with workplace conflict. And that's in keeping with Hallmark 6, I believe, or maybe I'm getting it wrong. No, Hallmark 6 is the earliest, lowest level, which is our goal, but also Hallmark 2. So that's really important to us. And given that this program is now 17 years old, we've had time to get those in alignment. And then teams at each site, staff at all the sites, so 10 correctional facilities, central office, and field services, which is probation agents and support staff, who service 82 of the 87 counties in Minnesota. We have two, each of those is a site. We have 2 coordinators, administrative team liaison, and a supervisor liaison. That's probably a lot of information for some of you, but hopefully it's helpful for some others. As I said, you can look up the policies if you're interested as well. Okay, not hearing any questions? Okay, I'll move on. So an integrated conflict management system facilitated meeting could be mediation, a circle, or workplace conference. So you see the people we had you picturing yourself as this fellow in the blue shirt and now sitting down with the lieutenant and some of the other staff who are affected, and 2 facilitators. We use co-mediators, circle keepers or workplace conferencing facilitators. So the benefits to staff are pretty widespread, and certainly include these that I'm showing you. It allows employees to work through problems on their own, resolve their own issues. They don't have to rely on management to do that for them. It's, dad, mom, he's treating me badly, do something. They don't have to rely on supervisors, which is a great benefit to all. It can build stronger relationships between staff. It can build accountability. It can build trust between coworkers. And there's an opportunity to decide how to do things differently in the future. Something as simple, and again, I'm sure this is in keeping with some of the experiences you all have had in mediations, whether workplace or not, or community and other settings. A common one for us is at the end, okay, in the future, if I hear that you're bad-mouthing me or you're spreading gossip about me, I'm going to go straight to you. And I'd like you to do the same with me. And let's not let the gossip mongers run us. Right? That's how something might be done differently in the future, as an example. Now, our face-to-face, we are in a highly regimented business, corrections. Our face-to-face services are strictly confidential. That's enormously important for corrections. I imagine it is for many workplaces. But in a place with a lot of rules, with severe consequences for breaking rules because of safety and security, it's really important to be able to say to staff what is confidential, which in our case are the things that they tell us as their facilitators and the things they say in the facilitator group meeting cannot be repeated outside to others. No specific comments made by specific people. They can talk about their general experience of the event, but they can't talk about specifics people said. There are, of course, exceptions. We are mandated reporters on very serious matters that might come up, like helping an offender to try to escape. Wouldn't surprise you. But strictly confidential, voluntary participation, again, in a very rank-oriented field where people as staff don't have a lot of choice about their work environment. That is very, very important. Facilitated by trained staff. Now, just to be really clear, our mediators, circle keepers, conflict coaches, workplace conferencing facilitators are staff who are not paid anything more for doing this on top of their jobs. They're correctional officers, teachers, maintenance people, kitchen supervisor, behavioral health therapists and all administrators in the facilities and in central office and field services. All of our jobs are open to it too. So they're trained extensively and they get continuing education, of course. Our services are non-directive. I mentioned that earlier. It's very, very important to us. And they're available for staff, contractors, volunteers. They're not available if an investigation is ongoing or gets started in the middle of a mediation, for instance. And that is to save everyone's legal rights, to preserve everyone's legal rights. But we've had some really good success, and we've had some really good success after investigations when we have staff who are more mad than ever at each other because an investigation didn't turn out the way each thought it should, whether they got discipline or the other person didn't get discipline or whatever. So we've had some really successful experiences with that, where they have to get along. They have to be able to work together. So they have to mend fences. How many of you have done workplace conferencing or workplace mediations? Just out of curiosity, how many people do that sort of conflict management? Yes, Alicia? Great. Mary, Tammy? Yep, Brennan, unlimited scale, okay. Anybody else do workplace? Okay. Oh, I bet that's DG. I'm having a hard time figuring out DG from Brennan, but great. Marcy, yeah. Laura. Oh, I can't see the hand raise, sorry. There's probably some way I could make that up.
A hand raised from Gary Lacefield. Here, I'm going to unmute you for a second and see if you have a comment.
Great.
Gary, are you there?
Or was he just raising a hand because he does this?
It may just be indicating that he does have workplace experience. I'm going to go ahead and remute you, Gary, but raise the hand if you have something you want to say.
Yeah, thanks everybody. This is my first webinar and Brennan is wonderful. We'll just leave it at that. And I have limited stuff I can see. Okay, so a bunch of you have experience doing workplace conference or workplace mediations, conflict management, and some not, which is fine, of course. He mentioned that I've been a mediator and a restorative justice practitioner since '91, and when I was doing some of these outside of the Department of Corrections, I've had this role for 11 years, and I helped start the program. But doing this outside, I didn't do a lot myself. I did a few small nonprofits and one or two family businesses, but this has really been my workplace experience. I've done other things. Okay, thanks. So I'd be interested to know, we're going to move into the community mediation program part here in just a second, and I'd like to engage you in thinking about whether you might want to offer your services to government agencies, government bodies. So we'll get to that in a second. Our message in everything we do with the integrated conflict management system inside, because this is internal, right? This is all internal. Our message to our staff, volunteers, and contractors is you have a choice about how you respond to conflict. Conflict is normal. Conflict is going to exist. Anytime you have two or more people passing in the same hallway together, much less working together, they're going to have different perspectives, different opinions. There's going to be conflict. So it's how we respond to it. And it's particularly important in correctional facilities when, as y'all have agreed, there's such enormous safety and security issues. So we're always telling people you have a choice, and we often get this sort of response, which probably wouldn't surprise you as well, right? No, wait, no, I have no power over it. I'm only an officer, right? Or, I'm only doing my thing in my small area. But we all have choices. So that's our aim. That's our focus. Okay, so how is this pertinent to community mediation programs? And, no, I did see that. Thank you, Laura. Here's some questions for you. How many of you currently offer to businesses and organizations in your community training in communication skills? And we've got a question here as well. How do you address the culture of disempowerment experienced by staff? I'll get to that right now, actually. We address the culture of disempowerment experienced by corrections staff by repeating until we're blue in the face that their participation is voluntary. And about the confidentiality, we define it very, very clearly. And that the bars come off. Rank is immaterial when we get people together. And in fact, we've had this program for 11 years and we don't have retaliation. But corrections, by the nature of the beast, we have disempowerment. We have it's very strict. There are all these rules, and so yeah, it takes some effort for people to believe that. Yeah, there's we are corrections. We are paranoid. There's reasons for it. Rules, 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 and more rules. So, but it's been around for 11 years, and we've had really good experiences. So the word spreads, which helps. Will everybody use it? Heavens no. Our numbers, I think that as younger people come into the agency, there's more acceptance. And even among them, there are some who say, I'll never ever do that. I'm not going to say this is widespread. I have my numbers here. In the past 3 years, we've completed 46 facilitated group meetings. We had well over 1,200 documented conflict coachings, and we know that we've probably got another half again, more than that weren't documented. But yeah, no, there's a lot of resistance as well. Okay, thanks for that question. So how many of you currently offer training and communication skills to your community organizations? Okay, there's yes. Is that DG or is that Brennan? I don't know which. Tammy does? Okay, great. Mary, looks like Brennan. Okay. April, fantastic. Linda, Kathleen, fantastic. That's great. That's wonderful. And we've historically partnered with the Dispute Resolution Center here, the oldest community mediation program in Minnesota, by the way. And I don't think Jeannie's with us, but Jeannie Zimmer has trained 10 years has trained our mediators for 10 years. This is lovely. Okay. Myself and DG will appear, I think. Thanks, Brennan, for clarifying that. So the community mediation programs that I'm aware of here, many don't do this. And I'm thrilled that some of you do already. That's fantastic. That's great because people need it, as you know. How about conflict management skills? How many of you train or offer as a service to train the staff of community organizations, whether public or private, in conflict management skills? Linda, Mary, yep, okay. Kathleen, great, fantastic. Yep, Laura. And somebody says would bring in an outside trainer likely. Yeah, okay. YCRC, good. Is that your mediation program? I take it. Yes, okay. Susan, fantastic, great. Nice. So you're already on this. This is great. I'm thrilled because not so prevalent here. It's just not it's not a popular mode here. I'm glad it is in places else. That's great. Okay, so then adding to that, what about, do any of you offer specific trainings to organizations as team building or work unit training? We've been asked, supervisors have been asking us for this since before this program actually existed. Susan says yes. Yeah, okay, yep, Brennan or DG, great. Yeah, before this program existed, supervisors would come to us, Tammy, a little bit, okay, would come to us and say, you're doing murder dialogues. Okay, community building circles as team building. Yes, nice. We've developed it only in the past few years, and it's been fantastic for us. We often use, yeah. So for us, and maybe this is true for others out there because the boomers are retiring everywhere, but in correctional facilities, officers historically retired at age 55. So you can imagine the boomers falling off the edge of the world as a group has been something we're experiencing. We currently have in many work units up to 40% new staff, and they are not necessarily gelling with veteran staff. So that's an opportunity where we go in and we do fun, interactive, people are laughing, but they're learning more about each other. They're learning about communication and they're learning skills for conflict management, definite skills as well, but they're breaking down the barriers by laughing together and learning about each other. And that strengthens their relationships. allows them to see each other in different light, which has really been good for us. Yeah, I mean, analyzing funny videos from Seinfeld and Friends in terms of what's really going on there helps them then realize what they may be doing with each other too. So looks like not so many people are doing that yet, but I guess I'd encourage you to consider that. And then, of course, mediation services being offered to organizations for their staff disputes or staff customer disputes, or even large public policy issues. I don't know. We've got the Bureau of Mediation Services, which has gotten into Office for Collaboration and Dispute Resolution, is what it's called. It's a state entity here in Minnesota that does some large-scale public policy issue, facilitating town halls around the state and things. So do any of you, or do your programs, do you offer specifically mediations inside other organizations? Or is that a silly question? No. Anybody market that? Oh, they come to your office? Sure, okay. Right. And dispute resolution services. Okay, Lisa, yes. Several people, yes. Rachel, okay. Kathleen, all right. Great. Susan, Kara, for county. Okay, so there you are with government. Interesting. So you know about dealing with government. This is good because it's a little different. Good. All right, that's great. So for those of you who do offer that, and that of course is my last question, is government entities. For those who offer these services inside other organizations, nonprofits, public, private, whatever, yeah, I'd encourage you to think about government entities if you aren't already working with them. Kara, you could tell us about this too. I don't know if you want to unmute or not, but whenever we work with other organizations, oh God, Kara, you do restorative justice workshops in Folsom. That's fantastic. That is great. We do a lot of restorative justice in our prisons. That's why I came to work with DOC in '95. Yeah, that's Folsom. Johnny Cash comes to mind. We could all sing it. But yeah, consider working with government agencies or approaching them. Yeah, sorry, I know it's so bad. They have rules. They have rules that may be different than the rules you're used to, and it's okay. You just have to work with them and partner with them to figure out what those rules are and where the exceptions are and what triggers what. So, and particularly if it's corrections, jail, county or state or other, the rules are so important, and the sanctions. For instance, for us, if an employee gets disciplined, they can't promote for a whole year. Besides the shame of the discipline, which is generally how they feel about it. So there are rules and things move kind of slowly, but boy, do folks need your help. I'm just here to tell you. So Kara, do you want to tell us about working in corrections? You don't have to, but can you unmute?
Oh, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we actually went into CDCR, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, initially as volunteers, and started doing a once a month workshop on restorative justice for incarcerated individuals, and it's been unbelievable work. Yeah, a lot of these guys, 80% of them are going to get out. And so this is part of the R in CDCR. And, I met with the warden at Folsom Prison about a month ago, and he's interested in seeing the work expanded if we can do more. But you're right in that they have rules, and we have to follow those rules very carefully. We have a memorandum of understanding, which I think helps sort of guide us on, what we can and cannot do, and then also gives them and us expectations.
Nice. Boy, it's good to have those clear. That's great.
Yeah.
That is great. I tell you, if you're interested, I'm not in the restorative justice unit anymore, but if you're interested, my email's at the end. Email me, I'll hook you up with our restorative justice unit, because we've been doing this since '94.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe, share resources that would save you some time.
That would be awesome. Thank you. That would be great.
We have a huge amount of restorative justice in our facilities.
Oh, that's good to hear. Right on.
Yeah. So yeah, please feel free. And thank you for
Okay.
that. Good, and
Yeah.
that's a very exciting work.
Thank you.
Very cool. Cool. All right. So, sorry, back to community mediation organizations. What considerations come to mind when you think about those of you who are already doing it and those of you who aren't yet? Think about providing mediation and training services inside private organizations and public governmental entities. Does that sound too scary? Is that something you might be interested in as another market? What do you think? What might make it worth it or not? We're dozing. Oh, there, Kathleen, thank you. Allegations of criminal activity. Oh, and says somebody else, it takes some persistence with the government agencies. Oh, yes. Yes, persistence, hanging in for the long run. We have had several requests this year to offer mediation training in government organizations, especially social service workers, Susan says. Fantastic. Yeah, social service workers also, high stress, need help. Yes, need to understand the workplace culture and needs before implementing. Yes. Yeah, it's not just corrections that has a definite culture. Ah, good. Definitely rewarding work, working to get inmates in mediation with their supports. They'll have upon their release a lot of hoops to jump through, worth it. Yes, circles of support and accountability, circles, transition circles. Again, our restorative justice program could help you with that. Does our nonprofit that serves domestic violence victims? Yes, Circle Grove, Minnesota has, Cottage Grove, Minnesota has, I believe, still an ongoing domestic violence circle program, which does that as people are coming out, as offenders are coming out and coming back, reuniting with their families. Alicia, if only proposed by management, staff may not trust it, best to get buy-in for the service in advance of needing it. It's a good point. There's, yeah, that disconnect between staff and administration. Other staff saying, oh, administration's trying to manipulate us. It's really for their benefit. And in our case, this was started by staff for staff. It was started because of a really big need. And so we didn't have quite as much hurdles. We did have some of that, but not quite as much. Welcome, Regina. Right. So yeah, and maybe that's part of what DG or Brenda was talking about. Assess the workplace culture and the needs, and some of that needs assessment would generally be I would assume, talking to staff privately where they could say, this is what we need. Administration thinks we need this, but we really need this, or hearing from people's different perspectives, because administration has valuable viewpoint as well. So really good points, everybody. That's fantastic. Yep, Alicia says, need general information type training on what it is and isn't, so people don't resist as much, believing they have to compromise. Really good point. And this is why we stress that our program is based in transformative mediation, non-directive. We're not going to speak for people. We're not going to hammer on them. It's not settlement driven, the nasty words that we use in restorative justice a lot of times. And you're right. I was taught how to do that. That's how I was initially trained as a mediator. It's not what we do. So good points. It's great. Thank you. Good. Thank you. This is fantastic. Much better than me just talking to you. How silly would that be? Okay. So keep it coming, comments-wise. Here's a resource if you want to. I'm sure you've got resources for looking at return on investment, the benefits of costs of your services. There are lots of resources out there. If you haven't looked at this one, you may want to. It's free, and there are white papers as well. I mentioned MTI. We use, and they're licensed materials, licensed models, materials. Self-mediation. We have, as I mentioned, well over half of the agency trained in self-mediation, because we want to drive this to the lowest level, just like NAVCM's, again, if I get this right, hallmark number 2, but I may have mixed them up. So where we want to go is to pretty close to work ourselves out of business. It's not likely to happen, but the party line at places where all the staff are trained at self-mediation, we promote, is for supervisor when somebody comes complaining to them to say, well, you're both trained at self-mediation. What happened when you tried to talk things through? And if they say, oh, I would never do this, I'm a northerner and we're conflict avoidant, they say, well, go try it. And if it doesn't work, come back and tell me and I'll do a third-party resolution, another MTI model. So anyway, MTI offers these resources to you. I corresponded with them. They know I'm doing this. They would be free to you anyway, but they know, if you get a hold of them, you go to that and you put in your name so that they can send you a link and you can reference this or not as you choose to. I mean, this webinar. Okay, so let's think about it. I can't help you with other government agencies, but let's give it a little more thought about whether you might be wanting to work with, those of you who haven't already, and those who have, expanding it maybe, working with corrections, county, state. All right. So as you think about that, unless you have family background at all, like I think it was Tammy who did, your biggest challenge is going to be understanding the workplace culture. And of course, that would be in any workplace, except that corrections is a really, really different culture. Maybe I'm going to have to take my word for that. I don't know. So I would encourage you to think about offering your services to them. And so to do that, I would consider, here's my little bits of advice, my 2 cents, that you're going to want to learn about corrections, learn more, and then consider partnering being the key word with them. Okay. So imagine you've seen, like I have, a bunch of these movies. I have not seen Orange is the New Black. There are bits of truth in them and a whole lot of misconceptions as well. Of course, it's modern media, popular media. So how can you learn about corrections? Well, here are a couple suggestions. Reading primary sources and going to primary sources. The Correctional, Desert Waters Correctional Outreach has this Correctional Oasis newsletter. It's free. It's written by, the articles may be a little shocking to you. They're quite frank, right? And they're written by veteran corrections staff and the staff of the Correctional Outreach, which provides the free hotline for corrections staff and their families across the country. And then, of course, to ask individuals in corrections and potential client agencies. And I've got a question here. Who would you suggest we approach to learn if the system may be ripe for this type of partnership? Boy, if it's a union shop, I'd ask the unions and HR and line staff, officers, as well as approaching admin. HR would be admin, administration. Yeah, I mean, at all levels. Our unions, the people who started this program, the staff, the correctional facility staff who started this program were very attuned to the fact that they wanted the unions to know about this and not be afraid of it and to get on board with it. And they did a lot of work in that regard, and our unions have been very supportive. Once they understood it wasn't a tool of the administration to trick their people, and in fact, had these huge benefits for staff of potentially avoiding investigations, avoiding discipline that would prevent them from promoting, that this is really for staff. This is a great benefit for staff. They pushed us to go further and further with the types of matters that we could deal with. So in fact, a few years ago, we got pushed from both the unions and from the policy and legal director to change the policies so that if there are allegations of discrimination or sexual harassment and the people still want to talk things through, that we can do that after a careful screening process. So it goes up the flagpole to see if we need an investigation, if there needs to be an investigation, because it's really important to protect people, and we take that very seriously. I've had this happen 2 or maybe 3 times in my 11 years as coordinator, and each of those times it came back within hours with the head of policy and legal, the head of HR, the warden, the folks who needed to be asked, saying, please have them talk it through. That would be great. Because for us, and I used to work these lawsuits, some of you may be familiar with employment lawsuits. you can have somebody make a stray comment that is hurtful and that is related to my gender, my immigrant status, etc. And it's not part of a pattern of practice. So not every organization will embrace that, but in fact, our unions and policy and legal said, absolutely, why are we wasting hundreds of hours of staff time on investigations on some of these matters that don't actually need it? And we know that, we can avoid it. Plus, you can strengthen the relationship if the people talk things through. So I know that's controversial, and we take it very seriously, but it's an option. So more ideas. What are your ideas about who you would approach if you wanted to look into offering your services to a county agency? It doesn't have to be corrections. I mean, I'm talking about corrections because that's my world and I can speak to it, but who would you go to? I mean, do you have a neighbor working in one of these? Have you been on a church committee with somebody from one of these? Do you have an in? Does your mediation program have an in? What ideas do you have for how you could approach an agency initially? Kara, we participate in committees that bring together nonprofits and county agencies for improving communities. Great, exactly. That's a great example. Yeah, so you're already building those relationships and you share that goal. That's great. Facilitate info sharing sessions. You bet. If you don't currently have a committee, that's a great idea. Yeah, share one. I mean, host it. That's what we used to do in the Restorative Justice Department unit here in Department of Corrections. First it was Kay Pranis, then it was Kay Pranis and me, and then one other, Tim Hansen, got added. We would go out into the communities where people were angry about some aspect of crime, and we would host meetings that would end up forming collaborations between government, faith communities, school communities, just community people, right? They did that work. We provided the opportunity. So yeah, the info sharing sessions is where we used to start. We'd do a little talk. People would come. They would talk to each other. They would continue talking to each other, right? Hey, Sharice, welcome. What other ideas do you have for how you could test the waters or approach an agency of some sort? Huh? Offer quid pro quo services. Okay, so how is a county agency going to offer you a service? Or maybe you're talking about nonprofits. Brandon or DG? Oh, DV, domestic violence training. Oh, absolutely. That's a great idea. Yeah. CPS, criminal something, not criminal justice system would be CJS. What's CPS? Oh, Child Protective Services. Thank you. Never worked in that area. Right. Yeah. So trading services. Ooh, lunchtime presentations, Lisa. Nice. For professional groups that gather regularly, such as HR folks. That's a great idea. And I cannot tell you the number of Kiwanis type lunches I went to when I was talking restorative justice. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, folks are always looking for speakers. Fantastic, right? Yeah. The service organizations, professional associations, HR folks would be really good. They know the cost. The cost is unbelievable of staff not getting along. And I would guess that our experience is not unlike others. Generational differences exacerbated by the boomers retiring. We have more spots to fill than we can fill. So there's an increased focus on retention. Chamber of Commerce. Ooh, good idea. That is a good idea. Then you've got connections to all their members through Chamber of Commerce. That's a great idea. Cool. Okay, great ideas. Collectively, we're so much smarter. This is great. All right, keep it coming, but I'm gonna move on to the next because we have some time ending soon. Okay, so as I've said, I'm encouraging you to consider partnering with corrections as well as others, but I'll just speak for corrections. These are some of the many ways you could do it. You've already reflected on the ways you are, so this is not a surprise to you, but to customize training and communication and conflict management for their staff, to do internal training for them, to present that training to their staff with an agency co-trainer. Now, the reason I recommend an agency co-trainer in corrections is because it's a weird world, and you'll get a question you can't answer if you don't have a co-trainer who knows the world. Just saying, this would be a good idea. Train some of their staff as mediators. Jeannie Zimmer, as I said, has trained our mediators for 10 years. It's a lovely thing. Consider partnering with them to have your co-mediators or your mediators co-mediate with theirs and explore the benefits. You've got experienced folks. Their folks will not be experienced. You're just training them. But their folks know the jargon and will catch the nuances when somebody makes a comment that perhaps doesn't sound snarky to you or your mediator, but has layers of meaning, because in corrections it means something else, right? So some huge benefits could happen there. And perhaps also develop an entire integrated conflict management system for the agency. We have other state agencies here who've wanted to have an integrated conflict management system, have borrowed things from us, have hired a couple of our recent retirees. Department of Public Safety, or DHS, Human Services, has hired a couple of our recent retirees who happen to be pioneers who started this program because, of course, they want one of their own. So, yes, just give it some consideration. Don't have to do it. Going back to this, how many of you have ever worked in an intensely rule-oriented workplace? And seriously, I'd like to know. Because corrections is, as I've mentioned, one. I mean, I know we've got our friend going into Folsom, so you know the rules there. Has anybody served in the military? We've got law enforcement family, I know mentioned, but anybody else been in one of those really rule-bound settings? Juvenile hall and an SED school. Is that like a secured school, Laura? Like we have level 5 schools, I think we call them. But yeah, juvenile, sure. Rules. It's a good reference. Working with juveniles. Oops, severely. We work in both women's prisons. Oh, fantastic. Mary, great. Sorry, I can't even see these as fast as they come sometimes. Courts, yeah. Courts of rules. Used to work in that world. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, prisons. You can imagine. For those of you who haven't been inside a correctional facility, you cannot give an offender even a stamp, not even a postage stamp. And generally you can't touch them. You say, that seems really silly. People should be able to hug, maybe shake hands at least. Well, shake hands probably. But contraband can be passed. It's just a different world. So thank you. Yeah, so some of you are already very familiar with this. If you go to work with corrections, just be well aware that there's enormous sensitivity around confidentiality. What can they say to whom? Can they say things to you that you will not, or your mediators, that you will not repeat to their supervisors? Or under what condition will you have to? And I was happy to hear about that memorandum of agreement. So spelling out those limits is going to be really important. I love that's written down, actually. And actions that, so the exceptions, actions that could trigger an investigation, trigger reporting, investigation and discipline. That's really, really important. Final thought, as I encourage you to work with corrections from my own world of corrections, please consider. Be open to learning, try not to make assumptions, ask questions, and be patient. Corrections is this really different work environment. Those of you who work in it already know. Lots of necessary rules. You may not understand the reasons for them, but they are intensely necessary. And being that it's government means, as some of you have referenced, that decisions will be made more slowly perhaps than you're used to, and changes often happen more slowly than we expect. But if you hang in there, people will come around generally. So I say that, and you say to yourself, don't we do this with all our clients? Yes, I hope we do. I hope we use these stray bits of thought in all of our mediations and all of our restorative practices. It's just good practice. So, of course, it also applies to taking your services to public and private entities. Okay. Now, What questions do we have as we're coming up on the hour? I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, DG Mon, President of NAFCM, and Brendan, who's moderated and made this possible both technologically and because he's also the membership coordinator, I understand. And all of you for loved your comments. Very thrilled to hear about a lot of your work. It's really exciting. So, and you're welcome. Thanks, Tammy. Yep. Oh, thanks. Thank you for seeing that I was using the hallmarks. I was trying. If you have other questions, you can email me. There's my email. And I think this maybe has been, I guess this is being recorded, so other people can access it later if that's useful to you. But thanks for all the good work you do.
Great, thanks, Sue, and thank everyone who was able to join us this afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. Again, like Sue said, this is has been recorded and will be placed on the NAFCM website once we get it uploaded. So if you wanted to go back and review this again or check those resources that were highlighted, you'll be able to do that through the website. And again, thanks, Sue. This was a great presentation. I think we all learned a lot. So thank you for devoting some time to this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks.
Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
You too. Bye.